What's up, duelists? Now, you know I love Edison format. It is my favorite format of all time. It is the greatest format. It is the deck builder's paradise. But something's always bothered me. Something has always not sat right with me. And that is that Monster Mash it just isn't putting up the results that it should be. The deck is inherently very powerful. A lot of the cards in Monster Mash read like broken cards, cards that should be absolutely dominating the metagame, but it's not for some reason. If you look here, even on edisonformat.com, I'm going through all their decks, and you scroll down to M, and what? There's no Monster Mash. Monster Mash has done absolutely nothing, ever. It'd probably be under Rogue tier, if that. If that, which is really depressing. So, I took my superior deck building knowledge, my deck building skill, which I think is probably my best skill in this format. Well, not just in this format, but in Yu-Gi-Oh in general. I think deck building is definitely my number one skill. And I tried to apply a lot of my deck building knowledge to the deck, and I came up with 5 things I wanted to change with the deck that I think can make it actually very competitive and very powerful. And then I actually changed those things, and then on top of that, I built the list and I got some replays for you guys. So let's go ahead and talk through my thought process before reassessing Monster Mash, because Monster Mash is kind of one of those you can do whatever you want decks, but I think we should start, like focusing on like, okay, maybe you can do whatever you want, but maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should do some certain things that like actually definitely help you in some matchups, etc. So the first thing is I want to minimize bad draws. One of the issues with Monster Mash is you just draw a bunch of like cards that you had intended on milling, like Dandelion, Quick Draw, Treeborn Frog, Vayu. You'll draw too many Magical Merchants, you'll draw too many Raikos, you'll draw a bunch of slow cards that you wanted to mill from your deck to the graveyard, wolves even in some list. So I think that we need to take out as many of those cards as possible, because your opening 6 cards honestly matters more than like what happens when you resolve Merchant. Because more often than not, if you resolve Merchant or you resolve whatever milling card it is, you win anyway. So it doesn't really matter if you have like 15 good mill cards or like 3, honestly. Okay, the second thing is you got to improve the Blackwing matchup, which is probably the biggest issue historically with all monster decks, is that they're going to struggle with Blackwings, and then by extension, number 3, you got to improve your chances into Royal Oppression. Royal Oppression is devastating against Monster Mash decks. They usually have very few, if any, built-in outs. Usually they're playing cards like Raiko, which are incredibly slow to out the card, and it just puts you back so many turns, etc. And then number 4, I wanted to increase interaction so you don't get OTK'd. Another really big issue with Monster Mash is that like usually your only piece of defense is like Battle Fader and Gores, if that. Like a lot of decks don't even play Battle Fader. They usually just play like Trag Gores, and that's like their only defense at all. Or sometimes they're like setting a Raiko and they'll be like, I'll be fine, Copium. But in reality, a lot of the decks that are OTKing you right now, Dragons, Diva Hero, those types of decks, they're not going to give a shit about like one Battle Fader. Like you're going to have trouble slogging your way back through with versus those decks. And then number 5 is GCM, which is this sort of thought process I've been having lately. Ever since I built that Jinzo deck a few months ago, I've been thinking about good card maxing, which is like, it's a concept where you just put as many good cards in your deck as possible. And I know it sounds incredibly stupid and incredibly simple, but people will get too lost in the sauce with like engine cards or like whatever else it is. What else am I thinking? With like synergy cards and like combo cards that like are only good in like unique situations. I think what happens in Monster Mash is people kind of get lost in the fact that they can play all these like quick draw Dandelion, crazy nonsense things like whatever. But you really should just be playing the best cards possible, the best individual cards, the best cards that are going to start your game plan, the best cards that are going to keep your game plan resilient. And so it's a concept I've been thinking about a lot. Play as many insane bombs as possible, basically. And this is the list that I came up with. So I think this list is pretty close to exactly what you want to be playing with Monster Mash. It definitely feels incredibly resilient. Like it feels really, really strong. So first things first, how do we minimize our bad draws? Well, I cut all the like nonsense mills. I cut all of that. We do still have some bad draws in this deck. One of the bad draws you can have in this deck is you draw Gravekeeper's Descendant. So that's one bad draw. Another bad draw, you got Plague Spreader, pretty bad. You got Necrogardener, pretty bad. Okay, so you got 3 bad draws in this deck. But that's really not that bad. Like 3 bad draws in a deck, I mean, that's even less than your average Gladiator Beast. Everything else is like just a solid card that you actually want in your opening hand, which is nice. That being said, also, minimizing bad draws means minimizing risk of drawing multiple slow cards like flip effect monsters. I think flip effect monsters are incredibly slow. They're even slower than like stuff like Dimensional Alchemist and Witch of the Black Rose, which are normal summons. And I feel like flip summon monsters are even slower than normal summons. They're like half a turn slower, if that makes sense. So we've cut down to 2 Magical Merchants and 2 Gravekeeper Spy. You can always see them again in the mid to late game if you need to with Pot of Avarice as soon as you resolve the first one. And if you don't open with them, it's kind of okay because the actual preferred openers in this deck are Witch of the Black Rose, Dimensional Alchemist, and Thunder King Ryo, and I'll get into that in a second. So that's generally what I've gone with. Why Gravekeeper Spy? That goes along with number 2, improving the Blackwing matchup and improving your chances into Royal Oppression. So a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll have Raikou to stop Blackwings or to stop whatever Royal Oppression or whatever, and it's just too slow. It's just too slow because they'll like Bora Pierce over your Raikou. You'll take too much damage. You'll fall super far behind. You're not popping their monster. You'll pop their Royal Oppression, and like it's just really awkward. Instead, I think it's better to play Spy and Descendant because if they go attack into your Spy flips, you get to summon out either another Spy or a Descendant. You not only have defense for the following turn in case something goes wrong. Like, let's say I go Spy into Spy because I have Caius, right? And then I sack for Caius and I target their oppression. Not only have I removed the oppression, but I've also established another defensive piece in case everything goes wrong under that Royal Oppression. So Spy's just better under Royal Oppression than Raikou is. And I think in general in this deck, Spy is really good because it fuels Pot of Avarice and it also fuels Dark Arm Dragon. It makes it so you can play Dark Arm Dragon. And then on top of that, it gives you Tempest Magician access. And one of the hidden strengths of this deck is it's actually just a burn deck. Like it's low-key a burn deck. You want to get your opponent down to about 4,000, and then it's actually pretty easy to get 4,000 points of burn because not only do you have Tempest Magician, but you also have Caius for burn. You also have, Herald of Orange Light and then forcing through damage. You have Gallus the Star Beast to force through damage. You have Honest to force through damage. You have Witch into Black Rose into Special Summon Monster to force through damage. You have a million ways to just force through 4,000 points of damage, roughly around there. And Spy plus Tempest Magician is a great way to add to that game plan, which is what the deck wants to do. So yeah, that helps you improve the Blackwing matchup and improve your chances into Royal Oppression. Another thing that helps improve your Blackwing matchup is we've got 1 Herald of Purple Light. This is another interactive piece that lets you negate Icarus attack. And then we've got another 2 in the board. These are really nice cards because they're functionally like 7 Tools of the Bandit. They're functionally like Solemns that don't conflict with Witch of the Black Rose and Magical Merchant, and they also don't conflict with Dimensional Alchemist Mills as well. They're really, really strong in this deck because a lot of the times you'll start and you'll be like, Witch of the Black Rose, draw a new card, and then you'll draw either into a Herald or a Fairy. And that gives you basically Witch of the Black Rose plus Solemn as your starter, which is much stronger than Witch of the Black Rose drawn to like Treeborn Frog or drawn to a Vayu or a Sirocco or just another slow normal summon or flip effect monster. You draw into a faster card and a card that also interacts with the opponent's strategies and keeps you in the game longer, basically. So yeah, the Heralds are great into Blackwings. The Spy is great into Blackwings. Jinzo's great into Blackwings. Thunder King Ryo is actually really good into Blackwings if they don't draw Sirocco specifically. Honest helps you against Blackwings a lot. And then, of course, Tragors, as many faders as I could fit, which is 2. They also help you against Blackwings as well. So there's a lot of cards that help improve the Blackwing matchup in the main deck. It's still a tough matchup, but also Snipe Hunter is pretty good against Blackwings because they'll commit a lot of stuff to the board, and then you can summon him and you can just start popping stuff. That's another way you can sort of improve that matchup as well. But yeah, so I feel like the additions that I've made, I've cut a lot of the cards that are just like weak into heavy back row, that are not extenders, that are not like ways of interacting. Speaking of increasing interaction, we have now, instead of your standard like 3 to 4 hand traps, we've got Trag Gores, double fader, so that's 4 hand traps, and then we've got 4 heralds, so that's 8, and then we got 2 honest, so that's 10. It's actually 10 hand traps. You're very, very likely to open with a hand trap when you're playing 10. And then on top of that, you also have more ways of interacting like Thunder King Ryo and Christia. These cards help you interact when you have no trap cards. They can stop special summons. They can stop your opponent from coming back and involving or interacting with your position. And then Jinzo, of course, Jinzo and Snipe Hunter are ways of interacting as well, in that the deck didn't really have before. Jinzo's kind of a floodgate, and Snipe Hunter's kind of a way to blow stuff up. Snipe Hunter's really good in this list. We'll get into that in a second. Even when you miss with it, it's actually really good. And then good card maxing. Basically what I've done is I've stripped as many cards that you could possibly brick on, and then I've added a bunch of the best cards in the format, which I think are Archlord Christia, Dark Arm Dragon, and Dimensional Alchemist. I think Dimensional Alchemist is one of the slept-on cards, especially when you're like specifically good card maxing. Dimensional Alchemist is insane because if, let's say, I summon my Dark Arm Dragon and he gets bottom list, I can just summon a Dimensional Alchemist, and all of a sudden you can't kill my Dimensional Alchemist, or I'm getting Dark Arm Dragon back. So it's just a really, really solid card to help improve the density, the threat density of your deck. And it's like just a natural fit because it works with the Heralds and increases your defensive positions. And then on top of that, Dimensional Alchemist is so insane in this deck because you literally, when you summon it, you have like a 1 in 35 chance of missing with it, which is the absolute best Dimensional Alchemist you could possibly have. It's always going to hit. It's always going to find you a good card. It's always going to find you something nice, and you'll see that in the replays. What else? Sideboard. Yeah, sideboard stuff. Let's talk about that a little bit. I've got one Raikou on the sideboard. When you're going first, sometimes you want a Raikou. There are some matchups where it just fixes your sideboard numbers. 2 Cyber Dragons. This is for going second. 1 Trap Beater. It just helps improve your matchup against Royal Oppression. It turns Magical Merchant kind of into a Royal Oppression out because post board what'll happen is you'll go Magical Merchant and then, oops, accidental zoom. You'll mill a bunch of cards and then you'll have the 1 Trap Beater, and it makes it so you can actually shuffle five outs to Oppression back into your deck because of this 1 Trap Beater. So there's a reason there's only one. You only need the one, but because of it, like, so the way it works is like they'll attack into Magical Merchant, and depending on the matchup, you'll mill some combination of 2 Breakers, 1 Trap Beater, and then like some combination of either the Spies or Snipe Hunter, or depending on what you've sided in and out in that specific matchup. So you'll be able to shuffle back 5 outs to Oppression thanks to these numbers. And then 3DD Warrior Lady, this is just the best card in the format. It also turns on your Alchemists. It's really good in most matchups. It's insane versus Blackwings. It's really good versus Lightsworn, and it's really good versus Zombies. You could honestly make an argument to main them, but I think the issue with maining them is that they're just a little bit too slow. I think the deck suffers already from being kind of slow. DD Warrior Lady is ultimately, unless you're setting it, it's kind of a minus tempo card. It's difficult to say exactly that this card is always positive tempo, because sometimes you summon it, you banish their card, and then you're behind a summon, which is not ideal, but obviously it's very strong. It's just, it still puts you behind a summon. So you can't really afford to main it because the deck, like I said already, needs to cut as many bricks or as slow draws as possible. The deck needs to speed itself up, because if you think about it, every other deck in the format can summon a monster and set a trap card. You can't really do that with this deck. So you need to be making 2 plays in a turn as often as possible, and playing negative tempo cards is just going to really, really hold you back. A lot of the cards in this deck that I've chosen to include are positive tempo cards. And then for additional hand traps, I've got 1 DD Crow, 2 Herald of Purple Light, and actually 2 Herald of Green Light. Herald of Green Light is insane versus Dragon Turbo. It's insane versus hero decks because it stops Gemini Spark, Miracle Fusion, Future Fusion even, if you need to stop those. Herald of Green Light's just really good, and it's just an additional like piece of interaction that you can side in to stop any sort of deck that may be doing unfair stuff with spell cards. There are not a lot of decks that do unfair stuff with spell cards, but it's worth having the Herald of Greens in the side, I think, to improve those matchups, because normally some of those matchups are quite bad, but sometimes you can get like a free win if you just Herald of Green on like a trade-in, or you Herald of Green on like a Solar Recharge or something. All of a sudden, your opponent just has 3 cards in their hand, and they can't function because their combo deck bricks. And then, of course, 1 Heavy Storm for the back row heavy decks. You just kind of have to have it as an option to bring in over, I don't know, whatever. It's just another way to out Royal Oppression, basically. So this list, it assesses all of what I think are the problems with the deck and all of the ways to improve it into the metagame. I've got 2 replays for you guys. I only had a chance to get 2 replays of you for you with this list, but I think it definitely has potential, and I'm actually probably going to try to do, like, I've been doing these tournament videos, and I think I'm going to try to take this to one of those tournament videos. I'm not sure when I'm going to play it in one of those like 8-man, 16-man tournaments, so I can show it to you in a tournament setting, but I think the deck is super legit. Like, I actually think this deck is very solid, as opposed to where it used to be. We win the rock, paper, scissors, first replay, getting into the replays, and you can see the opening hand. Even though it looks kind of sus, it's actually pretty solid because Snipe Hunter Necrogardener is a really nice combo. Herald of Orange plus Christie is a really nice combo, and that's already 4 monsters for our Avarice. So this hand looks like it should be a brick hand, right? But there's actually like plenty of conversion and plenty of action. Like I can use this Snipe Hunter to turn a Necrogardna into a pop, and then let's say I draw another monster, which is more likely gonna happen than not. I can defend my Snipe Hunter one more time, pitch that monster for Snipe Hunter, and get another pop out of it, ideally. Of course, Snipe Hunter tends to miss, but we'll get into that later. I just draw pass because what could they possibly do to me? I don't want to summon anything or set anything, set the Necrogardna, because that's a misplay. Basically, you want to keep it in hand for the Snipe Hunter here. A lot of people would have misplayed here and set the Necrogardna. Definitely a bad play. You don't want to do that. You want to make sure you can convert that into a pop. He summons Beast of the Pharaoh. This card's going to see more popularity in the near future. There's a new OTK with it. I'm not going to go too much into it into this video, but I'll make a new video on the Beast of the Pharaoh OTK in the future. I know some people really like this card or really like these sort of debris zombie style decks. We take 400, we draw Gravekeeper Spy, and now you can see the strength of Gravekeeper Spy in this deck. I said it, and what can he possibly do? Like legit, what could he possibly do? You're going to Caius me? I got Herald of Orange. GG, that's it. 2 for 2 with tempo. Next turn I flip my Spy. I have all sorts of nice stuff going on. I can either descend it, pop his back row, I can get another Spy. I don't even have to flip my Spy. Shit, but probably would. And then Spy on top of that, plus the Herald of Orange, is already 4 cards for our Pot of Avarice. So it's just like absolutely insane. One thing that I've been thinking about wanting to fit into this deck is a 3rd Pot of Avarice, but I think for numbers reasons, you really can't. I think you only have to play 2, or you have to play only 2, because it just makes Gallus and Witch and Dimensional Alchemist like that much of a percentage worse. And really, you should only need to resolve 2 of them to win the game. So that's why I was thinking, okay, you really only need the 2. And you're not actually milling. Another card that I cut from this deck is Card Trooper. There's not a lot of ways to mill Pot of Avarice. Actually, I don't think there are any ways to randomly mill it outside of Gallus and Witch of the Black Rose. Okay, they summon their own Card Trooper. They're going to mill 3, and you'll see Spy's just really good. It just keeps us on the board. They do mill Mizuki Goblin Zombie, which is, pretty strong. So their setup is actually really good here. They have a Card Trooper in play. They have Beast of the Pharaoh. They have a live Mizuki. We're going to go ahead and grab the Descendant because he attacked with the Card Trooper. Now, had he known it was Spy, obviously it's better to attack with the Beast because then Card Trooper can attack over potential Descendant. But because he didn't know it was a Spy, Card Trooper's hitting the Spy and we're grabbing Descendant. One thing a lot of people don't predict is when you don't set back row, a lot of people won't predict Gravekeeper Spy. Gravekeeper Spy is normally played in like pretty heavy back row decks like Flamvel, Gravekeepers themselves, or Rescue Cat Synchro, which tend to play like a good amount of traps, like 12, and then some number of Book of Moons as well. So it's pretty nice that you can kind of fake people out. We draw Magical Merchant, and our hand is just like all gas. So one thing that a lot of players will mess up is when to activate Descendant. Some people sometimes don't recognize their position and when they should attack with Descendant first or when they should activate it first. Our position right now is the Gravekeeper Spy is actually a better card than Descendant because it's walling out his dudes. So I'd rather not sacrifice the Gravekeeper Spy and pop his back row because then I have a weak Descendant in play and not a Gravekeeper Spy in play, which is very solid. If in order for him to get over this Gravekeeper Spy, he's going to have to play into our Herald. So instead of sacrificing the Spy to pop his back row now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to attack with Descendant over his monster to try and bait the back row. If it's a D-Prison, I'd much rather trade the Descendant itself and not the Spy with the back row because that leaves me with a better position after the trap card gets traded. I go ahead and attack the Card Trooper because I don't want him milling more cards, finding his Plague Spreader for his Mizuki. That could be too devastating for us. So we attack over the Card Trooper. He's going to draw a card. We're going to let that happen. Main phase 2, I'm going to go ahead and pop the back row because now I'm like, okay, I don't want it to be something that can extend for him. I don't want it to be like something that, like a return from the different dimension, something like that. He didn't use it on the attack. It might be a bottomless trap hole. Let's just get it out of here right now. And then I'm going to set the Merchant. And usually, in order for him to play through this Merchant, he's going to have to trigger my Herald. So, assuming he doesn't have broken mind control, which he does, this would be an insanely powerful position for us. And even with him having broken mind control and deciding to blind target our set, cringe, we're still in a decent spot because we still have our entire opening hand. The Gravekeeper Spy cleared 2 threats, basically, on its own. And yeah, he's going to flip Magical Merchant. He's going to hit Telekinetic Power Well, add that to his hand. But he doesn't have Krebins in the graveyard, so it could be a lot worse for us. It's obviously very shitty that he got the magical merchant activation and we didn't. But yeah, here he summons Debris Dragon. He's going to target his monster. I'm going to chain Herald of Orange because I just want to get my merchant back. I just want to buy tempo. I want to clear the Beast of the Pharaoh out of play. I want to make sure he has no synchro material to work with, basically. So he's going to use Mizuki to grab Goblin Zombie and attack into Descendant. This actually tells me a lot about his hand. It tells me he has no access to Krebins or any other tuner. So that means his Power Well is completely dead. And that's going to influence the way I play. He's going to crash into Descendant and go find a Plague Spreader zombie. So now I know a lot about what he's trying to do. He's trying to put together a synchro play, potentially something with Book of Life, potentially something with, I don't even know. I honestly don't even know why he did this, but he basically is telling me he doesn't have tuner access, and that's why he goes for this aggressive crash. He just passes the merchant back to me after setting a back row, and we pick up Dimensional Alchemist, which is a fantastic draw, because if I summon Dimensional Alchemist, it's an extender I can play into a sweeper like Torrential Mirror Force. Obviously, Torrential is a little bit bad here because it'll definitely clear our whole board and we won't get value out of the Alchemist, but even if that's the case, we can then Avarice back all of our cards and just be up our life. So yeah, you can see the strength of Dimensional Alchemist, and let's say I summon it and I banish the top card. It's just nice because then Dimensional Alchemist dies, we get to add a card back, and then we can Avarice back that Alchemist. It's just really, really a lot of resource. My word is not good. My word is not good. Okay, Summon Snipe Hunter is the play though for sure because we just want to get the Necro Garnet in the graveyard. I go ahead and priority activate, and we miss, which is the nature of Snipe Hunter. It's like, okay, that's going to happen. And sometimes you double down because you're a gambler like me, and I do pitch my very strong Dimensional Alchemist here. I shouldn't do this. This is not a play I should make, but it's a play I wanted to make because I just wanted to hit off Snipe Hunter so badly. This is a bit of an error play. Don't make this play. If you're me, or if you're playing this deck, just swing with your monsters. You're gonna get 5 in the grave for your Avarice. You're gonna get Necro Garden banished to make sure your Dimensional Alchemist is live. Don't waste your Alchemist there. It's too high. It's too high value. But we pitch it again. We are able to hit the Pharaoh, and I'm like, fuck it. Let's just shove damage. My deck plays a hell of a lot of burn. If he has Mirror Force, I can Avarice post battle phase. I attack with everything. We get in actually a ton of damage. We remove his only monster in play for his Plague Spreader, and things are looking good. Main phase 2, I decide to pop his back row again in case it's like return or something crazy like that. I just want to try and get it out of here. And we miss again because Snipe Hunter is Snipe Miss. But that being said, it does let us Avarice while leaving Necro Garnet in the graveyard. So even in this like really greedy, aggressive play, we're actually kind of chilling. We draw into another good discard for the Snipe Hunter. We draw Plague Spreader. I pitch that, target the back row. And we have Honest, which insulates us. We have Necro Garnet, which insulates us. We pop his back row. It ended up being a bluff, which is very frustrating, but such is life. We got Plague Spreader plus Descendant, so we can go into Tempest Magician next turn. So we have a lot of ways to close this game out. We got all the reach, we got all the protection, we got a way to make a synchro. He's at 3,200. I'm feeling pretty confident about closing this game out, even though I've been playing kind of sloppy, just because this deck is so solid. Like, you just have so many ways of closing out a game once you get them to like this rough amount of life points. Hold up, I got a cough. Here, he's got Brain Control for Descendant. He's going to pay 8, take the Descendant, drop even lower in life points, putting him into range of, I believe Tempest Magician is lethal now. Because if, it comes in with 1 spell counter. Yeah, it comes in with 1 spell counter. And then when you attack, that's 22, and then you remove that 1 spell counter, and it's 27. So, yeah. Tempest Magician should be lethal now at this point. That being said, he is going to clear my Spellcaster, so I can't make Tempest Magician anyway. He's going to summon Plague, Synchro into Yugioh, attack the Snipe Hunter, completely forgetting that we set up that Necro Garnet in our graveyard. He goes ahead and Pot of Avarices, which is honestly fine for us because that means he no longer has his Plague access. He no longer has any of this other stuff. At the worst case, we can Magical Merchant Honest over this Yugioh and then attack directly with Snipe Hunter. Best case scenario, we draw something that wins the game on the spot. He goes ahead and Avarices. He accidentally only shuffles back 4, but I remind him that he needs to shuffle back the Card Trooper, so he puts back the 2 cards. And yeah, there we go. He draws 2 new cards, sets back rows, and passes. And we do pick up something that immediately wins the game, which is Caius. So we sacrifice the Snipe Hunter because we have the Honest. Having Magical Merchant retains a guaranteed out to Goyo Guardian thanks to our Honest. I go ahead and sacrifice for Caius, target is Goyo Guardian, and because this summon was successful, it basically tells me he doesn't have Solemn, he doesn't have Bottomless, so it's pretty safe to just stack, go for Mistworm, and then bounce his back row, and then win from there. His back row were Powerwell and Typhoon, so they were just bluffs anyway. And I know because he had not been setting cards the past few turns, one of them at least was a bluff. So yeah, pretty much we're able to go for game using that Mistworm. And like I said, this deck has very, very little difficulty forcing through the last few points of damage once you get them at that like 3,000, 2,000 range. Game 2, I forgot how I sided in this matchup. I didn't take a screenshot. I took a screenshot for the next replay though. You'll see some of the cards I sided in, I think. We open up with functionally the same hand, and the hand is just really good. Obviously, Spy is insane. It feeds Avarice. Herald is insane. It defends our Spy, and that's pretty much all you can ask for. They summon Card Trooper, so they start off with Card Trooper again. This time they actually have a great mill. They mill Krebins plus Dandelion, and they get 2 tokens. So that's actually pretty threatening, because if he has Caius, now the Caius is going to be 1 for 2 into our Herald instead of 2 for 2, which is pretty frustrating, but that's just the nature of it. We draw our own Caius, which is amazing. We go ahead and set the Spy past the turn. Spy is so good in this deck. It's actually so good. But you definitely don't want to play 3 because drawing multiple is ass. He summons a Bree Dragon. We have Herald for that, so we're just going to negate that. We don't want him to summon a Starbucks Dragon. He attacks into our Spy. Spy's going to be amazing. Here, we just grab Descendant. This is like everything you could possibly ask for. Passes the turn back. And now, because I said in the last game, you got to know when to use your Descendant, this is an instance where you actually want to Descendant first before attacking. Because if I attack into his Card Trooper and he has D-Prison, it's a little bit annoying. I'm not going to lie. I want the monster to hit the graveyard because I have Pot of Avarice. So what I want to do is actually sack the Spy for Descendant, target his back row, and then sack my Caius, or sack the Descendant for Caius, target his Card Trooper. So that's what I'm going to do. Pop the back row. It's Mirror Force. Either way, it would have been a similar outcome. Sack for Caius, target the Card Trooper, attack over the token. But the only difference is with this scenario where I'm not attacking with Descendant and I'm doing the Caius first, I actually get to clear one of the tokens. So it just removes him. It removes one body from him. It's a little bit more optimal. We pass the turn. If our Caius dies, we can then Avarice, or we can choose to Chaos Sorcerer because we have Lights and Darks. So we're set up to do something next turn. Not a lot of thing, but something. If he has Caius, it's obviously tough, but we have Chaos Sorcerer to respond to it. So yeah, he just sets a monster and passes. We pick up Gallus, which is really nice because that'll immediately make our Pot of Avarice live, even if it misses, which it does. 1 in 31 chance. And of course we miss with him, which is very, very unlucky. But still puts the 5th monster in the graveyard so we can Avarice here, which is nice. At the very least. It is unlucky. It is incredibly unlucky. But it's the worst case scenario, and everything is still looking good for the deck, which is impressive to say the least. We pick up Witch, which is nice because if our board gets broken, we can summon Witch and it'll help us rebuild, help us find that light for the Chaos Sorcerer that we shuffled back. I summon Necrogardnut because I just want to get him into circulation. I want to get him in my graveyard, and I also want to clear both monsters. So I go ahead and attack over that. It's Mizuki, which if you see his graveyard, even though it is the 5th monster for Avarice, if he Avarices, that's good for me. It's his first zombie, so he can't actually target anything with it. And also his return is gone, so the Mizuki is much less threatening. Plus, it's not like a tuner for Zombie Master. He sets a background passes, we draw Gores, and now I'm feeling great because as long as I get in damage this turn, I attack for 600, I attack for 2400, he activates Phoenix Wing Windblast on Caius. And this is when Phoenix Wing Windblast is at its worst, when you have to pitch something to bounce a Caius, because you know I'm going to get another activation out of this Caius, and that makes me very happy to see. He pitches Malicious, targets Caius, and I'm like, okay, you got Malicious, you got Mizuki, you got Krebins and Grave, what can you make happen? And the answer is nothing. Pot of Avarice. And because he leaves Mizuki and not Malicious, it tells me he has the 2nd Malicious in hand, so he's bricked on Malicious. His build is a little bit brickier than your average Debris Zombie build is, and it doesn't look like he has a way to streamline that Powerwell OTK. He doesn't have, like, Armageddons and Greffers like the list should be playing. So, yeah, I lost my train of thought there. But you get the idea. Avarice resolves. He's got a much tinier graveyard now, but he does have Foolish Burial for Goblin Zombie, and he does have Mizuki into Caius. So he did finally find that Caius, which is bad for us, honestly. It's pretty bad for us. Banishing the Necrogarden is tough. We're going to take 1,000 points here, and he's going to get a search, either a Plague Spreader or a Zombie Master. Now here I'm actually pretty shocked he searches for Zombie Master, because he doesn't have tuner access in his hand, you'll see. I honestly, if I was him, I would have searched Plague just so I could have tuner access, because his hand already has non-tuner access. Zombie Master isn't that great. Sure, you can pitch your Malicious, you can pitch your Beast of the Pharaoh to get the Goblin Zombie back to get tuner access, but that's just a little bit slow. Like, is that really going to happen? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you just search Plague, and then you hope to draw a discard outlet. Next turn, you could even, like, Synchro with the Caius or whatever. You can Book of Life, because he has Book of Life on the Goblin Zombie. If I put a monster in my graveyard, and then Synchro with that, with the Plague, and then make Bryonic, and then use Bryonic as the discard outlet. So I think searching for Zombie Master here is a little bit of a misstep from the opponent. He attacks, and I thought for a really long time here, I thought for like 30 seconds here, I actually think it's better to use Battle Fader here. And the reason it's better to use Battle Fader is if let's say I use Gores, right? And I don't know if he doesn't have a back row, right? If he has any back row, I'm going to be forced to sack one of my Gores, either the Gores or the token, for Caius to target his Caius to guaranteedly clear it through back row. And then I play into Torrential really, really badly. So I think it's better to save the Gores because I'm not getting maximum equity out of that. And then on top of that, if I use, like, let's say I use Gores Caius next turn, my Battle Fader is functionally a dead card. It's functionally a -1. Whereas using the Battle Fader now, I can turn that into a 1-for-1 because I can sacrifice it for Caius target his Caius, and then still have the full equity Gores for follow-up. And I think it's better to have the Gores for follow-up than have the Battle Fader for follow-up. A lot of people would have got greedy here and dropped the Gores, thinking like, 2400 Gores token is insane. I want to drop the Gores ASAP. But I think this is the better sequencing, because we know we're drawing Caius, of course. And then on top of that, if our Caius gets removed, we have the option to summon Witch for full value. Witch doesn't draw a card if you control another card. So it'll probably be dead if we stick the Gores at any point. So we want to be able to use our Battle Fader and use our Witch before we use our Gores, so we can get maximum value out of our hand, basically. We draw the Caius, we go ahead and sack the Fader for Caius, target his Caius, deal 1,000, attack directly, and now he's at that juicy life total range where we can just force through the last few points of damage pretty easily. He draws, he summons Zombie Master, he pitches Malicious, he summons Goblin Zombie, we draw DD Warrior Lady, which is just fantastic. I had sided these in versus him. I normal summon it, I attack over the Zombie Master, and then I banish his Goblin Zombie so he doesn't get access to that Plague, which I know he is missing because he didn't search for it. Otherwise, last turn he would have gone Zombie Master, pitch Plague, bring out Plague, and then Yugioh Guardian, steal my Caius. But because he didn't have the Plague, he wasn't able to make that play, basically. Here he goes for a defensive Malicious and sets a monster. I think if you're him, you have to take a risk and not do that. I think you have to... I don't know. I get it, because you are just dead to another Caius, and you don't know if I don't have that. So, it is important to make this play, but I think you just have to take the risk, and then hope that you can have an OTK turn later on. He just passes the turn back. We draw Honest, which is great, because it's a light for Sorcerer. It's also a way to force through damage if we find another light. So I go ahead and summon the Honest, I attack over the Malicious, I attack into the set Reaper, I bounce the Honest, I pass the turn. I love Honest, this card's so good. Opponent sets a monster, passes, we draw Gallus the Star Beast, and for some reason I fumble at this point in the game. And even though my fumble is still probably the best play, I forgot that I didn't have a light in my graveyard. I forgot that I averaged earlier. For some reason at this point in the game I thought, oh, I have a light in my graveyard. So I decided to just activate the Gallus. I do hit Caius, which is very lucky because it puts him in range for Chaos Sorcerer to attack for game, and I'm like, oh, that's insane. I'll just Gallus, I'll normal Witch, I'll Black Rose his field, and then I'll special Chaos Sorcerer, and then I'll win. And that's what I was thinking. And for some reason in my head, I had forgotten that I avariced. I make Black Rose Dragon, I blow up the field, I check my graveyard. You can see here, viewing graveyard, like snap check my graveyard to banish the light in the dark, and I'm like, oh shit. I forgot I avariced, and I didn't have a light in the dark. Chaos Sorcerer plus Avarice is always an awkward combination. It like very rarely isn't. That being said, I'm not too upset by this. Opponent's at 21. I have Gores, I have Honest, I have Sorcerer. It's very difficult for me to really lose here. Even if he brings back that Reaper, there's a 50-50 chance he just loses immediately because he attacks, we drop Gores. Gores is lethal over the Reaper. Chaos Sorcerer is close to lethal over the Reaper, so yeah. He goes ahead and Book of Life, brings out the Zombie Master, goes for a pretty committal play, pitches the Plague Spreader that he drew for turn. Very lucky. Is able to bring out Beast, stacks for Plague, summons that. And now what he should have done, the more passive play, was attack with all, and then main phase 2 Mistworm, bounce my Gores. and then special back his Spirit Reaper, and then he has a Mistworm and a Spirit Reaper in play, and he's also dealt a lot of damage, which is very nice for him. But this situation, going for it pre-battle phase does play into Battle Fader, does play into Gores, it does play into a lot of other cards that kind of just break him. So he brings out the Spirit Reaper in attack position, gets very greedy, decides he wants to get that extra card. He's too low. He's too low to make this play. I think it's just too greedy. He attacks with the Spirit Reaper. We drop Gores. He does hit the worst card in our hand too. He hits Honest, which is very unlucky for him. And then he attacks over the token, of course, because it is a 300 token. And then end phase, he gains 600. So technically he's not dead here because this gained him 600, but I mean, any summon beats him, and we drew a summon. Honestly, we drew the best summon in the deck, Dimensional Alchemist, so just summon that, and then I can special to Chaos Sorcerer if I absolutely have to too as well. So yeah, solid game, solid showing for the deck. Even though we had some misplays, even though we had some terrible luck milling the average with Gallus, even though like I was not playing my best, the deck performed really well, and that's actually a really good showing for the deck. It shows that the deck is solid. Because if I was playing even better, the deck would have felt really, really strong. Okay, next replay. Next replay is against more of a meta deck. That last deck was kind of a zombie plant brew, but this is versus an actual meta deck. We've got one rock, paper, scissors, which is always good, of course. Our deck loves to win rock, paper, scissors. And we open up, this is what I would consider to be the nuts. Basically, we have Thunder King turn 1 going first with Honest, which is the defense you could have. The only thing that can make this hand better is having Herald of Orange over like Gores or something. But this is like actually just the nuts. We have Snipe Hunter to react to boards. We have Gallus to pressure. We have Alchemist to extend. We have Thunder King Ryo to lock the opponent out. And then we have Gores in case everything goes south, as well as Honest. So we have 2 hand traps in this hand. Summon on Thunder King Ryo, pass the turn back. Opponent T-sets, passes the turn back. We draw Witch of the Black Rose. I decided to just attack. Witch of the Black Rose is the perfect draw because that's the 1 card Black Rose with Gallus. It's 1 card functionally because the Witch of the Black Rose replaces itself. We attack into the Honest. He shows Honest, and then I'm like, okay, I'm okay playing into Torrential because I'm cool trading my 2 cards for his Honest because my hand is so much better. So I'm going to summon Dimensional Alchemist, banish the top card of my deck, and I hit a Necrogardener, which is actually a really good hit because that's a great discard for our Snipe Hunter in case the Alchemist dies. So if they attack into my Alchemist, I might just let it die. Who knows? He sets a monster, passes a turn, we draw a second Honest, and this hand just feels like, it feels unbeatable. Like, how could you possibly play through this hand? It just feels really, really strong. He would need to have specifically, like, some crazy combination of, like, DD Warrior Ladies and Brain Controls and then maybe stick a Christia, but even then, like, we have a lot of ways to force through a Christia and force through damage. So I'm going to be looking at just trying to get through his sets, get in some of that preliminary damage, and then close things out with my Gores, my Snipe Hunter, and my Gallus. That's my game plan here, or my Honests, because I have functionally a lot of points of burn in my hand. I activate Dimensional Alchemist, I hit Gravekeeper Spy, which is perfect, because at this point, I'm thinking I'm playing versus fairies. I go ahead and attack and do his new set. If it's a Battle Recruiter, I kind of want to force it. If it's a DD Warrior Lady, I don't want it to hit my Alchemist. I actually want it to hit my Thunder King. Because against fairies, Thunder King's pretty bad. It's a liability. They can crash recruiters into it. And I know they don't have a recruiter because they would have crashed into Thunder King. So it's possibly a DD Warrior Lady, possibly something else. I attack into it. It's Raikou, and I'm like, okay. They target Thunder King. I'm like, that means they're definitely looking to either A, special summon a monster, B, search for a card, or C, they don't care about the Alchemist for some reason. They go ahead and mill 3 cards, and they reveal that they are, in fact, on Lightsworn. Now, because they are on Lightsworn, I actually want to clear this Honest. I don't want them to have an Honest, because Lightsworn with an Honest is a little bit scarier than Fairy with an Honest, because they have bigger monsters. That's the only reason why. It's just a little bit scarier for Lightsworn decks to have an Honest. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade. They also have a lot of ways to like clear my Dimensional Alchemist and make my Honest dead. So I think trading my Honest for their Honest here is actually really good. They are confirming they are on Lightsworn because they reveal Lila and Cold Wave. We attack into Honest. We use our Honest to trade with it, and that just happens. And then we pass the turn back. We still have a second Honest here. He summons Aaron. I'm like, okay, it's definitely Lightsworn. Aaron's going to attack into Dimensional Alchemist, and we want to get ahead here. We need to start dealing some damage, because like I said, I need to use these cards to deal damage to the opponent. Honest is going to get traded here. This Honest is basically going to convert into 3100 damage, because it's going to gain me 1300 here, and then on the crackback, the Dimensional Alchemist is going to hit for 1800. So I think that that's a pretty good value for this Honest. Not only is it preventing him from milling, preventing him from getting the 4th name down for JD, preventing him from having access to like his own shit. It's also dealing 3100 damage. It's about as good of an honest as I can ask for at this point in the game. So we just shotgun it. He special summons Trag, which I think is a bit of a misplay because it's an 1800 Trag. If you want to special summon it here, you want to special summon it in defense position, so I can't crash into it. Special summoning it in attack position is pretty bad because that means I can crash into it for +1. So I go ahead and activate Alchemist, banish Sangin, attack into his Tragodia, and yeah, I just get my +1. I go ahead and actually add back that Necrogarna because Snipe Hunter plus Necrogarna is really good. Here I just set the Merchant because I was thinking one of the reasons he was special summoning Trag and attack there is because he has Chaos Sorcerer. So I don't want to get too greedy with the Snipe Hunter pitch Necrogarna just yet. I want to wait until he summons that Chaos Sorcerer. That was one of the only reasonings why I could think he could logically want to summon the Trag in attack position there. And he just passes a turn back. So we're going to get to resolve our Merchant. This is a bit of a scary Merchant situation because we mill most of our deck. And if you do have Avarice in the bottom 3 cards of your deck, it's pretty bad. Or not bottom 3, sorry, bottom 2 cards of your deck, it's pretty bad. But thankfully we have 7 cards left in our deck. This mill is quite awkward because it puts us to 10 fairies, which is the worst possible number because it means we can't shuffle back 5 fairies and Chaos Sorcerer to put ourselves to 4 fairies for Christia. So our Christias are pretty much just bricks at this point, which is fine. I mean, like, later in the game, that just happens in most Christia decks. The Avarice here, actually what it should shuffle back, I make a slight error. It should shuffle back Chaos Sorcerer, Thunder King, Double Honest, and Herald of Orange. But I think I shuffle back Chaos Sorcerer, Thunder King, Honest, and double Herald of Orange. The reason we should shuffle back double Honest is because it is a standalone hand trap that works without having another fairy in our hand. We actually don't have another fairy in our hand, and I didn't pay attention to that, but because we don't have another fairy in hand, it's better to draw into a single Honest than it is to draw into a single Herald, obviously, because we don't have a fairy. So yeah, I go for the Avarice, and we do shuffle back a lot of our power cards. I'm just looking to shove for damage here, and I do make that slight error. And I'm a little bit punished for it because I do draw one of those Heralds. I'm like, oh, I should have shuffled back that 5th Honest. So a little bit of an error on my part, but it's okay. We go ahead and activate Gallus because Gallus is only going to get worse as the game goes on. There's still 1 Avarice left in our deck, so there's a 10% chance it misses. So I'm just going to shotgun it now. We actually do hit the last Christia, which is really nice because it would not only be a brick, but it's also maximum damage. It deals 1600 damage here. It's not maximum. I think Trag is the highest, but dealing 1600 is really big damage. Next, I summon Snipe Hunter because I want to blow up his back row. If it's Beckoning Light, I basically want to force him to use it now. It looks like it's Bottomless Trap Hole, but we priority activated the Snipe Hunter, so we do get to pitch the Necrogarna, which may seem bad, but it's actually quite good. It means we're at very low risk of losing both our monsters, and then we're at very high potential to summon our Caius next turn, as well as our Chaos Sorcerer, and then be able to use those 2 cards to go for game, because we're dealing 1000 here. So putting him to 4100 and the next turn having Caius plus Chaos Sorcerer is pretty much guaranteed lethal. We attack for 200, attack for 800, pass the turn, obviously. And we also have Gores in case things go really south. He goes Foolish, mill Wolf. Wolf comes out. Wolf attacks over the Merchant, which is fine. We just let this happen. I'd rather save the Necro for something else. He sets a back row passes. We draw another Gallus, and it does have a 1 in 8 chance of missing, but I'm going to go for my guaranteed shit first. I'm going to go for Caius, target the Wolf, banish that, and then I am going to summon the Chaos Sorcerer and try to attack for game, and we are able to attack for game there. So we saw some interesting things. He was on Bottomless, he was on Trag, but ultimately I think that Lightsworn should be a good matchup for us because we have those Herald of Oranges, and we have the Christias, and we have a lot of resilient threats like Dimensional Alchemist. I did take a screenshot of how I sided in this matchup. So what I sided out was going second, I sided out Darkarm Dragon plus the Spy and Descendant package. Spy's actually pretty bad against Lightsworn. Wolf, Jane, Aaron, they have a lot of ways to just get over it, and it doesn't really out anything unless they're siding in Royal Oppression. Now, if I notice they sided in Royal Oppression game 2, I'll side the Spies back in, but I don't really know if they're going to side those in, and even in those cases, they can attack over the Spy, and even if we grab Descendant, like, we've lost our Spy, so can't really pop the Royal Oppression very effectively. I sided out Jinzo and the Herald of Purple. Again, I don't really care about their, like, 1 Bottomless or their 1 Mirror Force or whatever. I'll just play into it, because this deck does a very good job of extending into 1 back row, or even 2 back row sometimes. These cards, the Purple Light, they're mostly for 2-for-2 trap cards, like Icarus Attack, Phoenix Wing, and I know the Lightsworn deck's not playing that. And then Jinzo's more for, like, set 4 decks. and we don't really care about like the set 1 or set 2 that comes from Lightsworn. Same thing for not bringing in the Breakers, the Trap Eater, and the Raikou. And then I did bring in the 2 Herald of Greens, because like I said in the intro, Herald of Green on Solar Recharge is oftentimes just GG. I brought in the 2 Cyber Dragons because we are going second. I want a little bit more speed. I brought in DD Warrior Lady to help us play through Honest, and I brought in the DD Crow to help us interact with Plague and Wolf, basically. So yeah, that's how I sided. Going second, we have a lot of good starts. One of them being Witch the Black Rose, one of them being Cyber Dragon, one of them being Gallus. This deck just draws the nuts always. This list specifically, because like I said in the beginning, we minimized all of the bad draws. The deck only draws good cards. That's why all of the opening hands have looked so good. Every card in the deck is just a great card to draw. And that's exactly how you should be playing these Monster Mash lists. I think focusing too much on the crazy mill synergy is something that people maybe would have done in 2010 because they needed that insane serotonin boost. But nowadays, it's more about having the consistent opening hand and then having the strength of the like raw +1 from Witch of the Black Rose, drawing you into a quality card every single time. Opening here, we go Cyber Dragon plus Caius. There's a lot of different ways we could open up this game. We could have gone Cyber Dragon DD Warrior Lady. We could have gone Witch of the Black Rose plus Gallus. We could have gone... There's a million different ways we could have approached this game. And I think this is the best way to approach it, because this way we have... I don't know. We still keep the Herald in hand in case we draw another Fairy. What I was thinking is, like, there's one way to approach this game where we go Gallus plus Witch, and then we make whatever, and then we... No, we just go Gallus. Sorry, not Gallus plus Witch. We just go Gallus, sacrifice it for Caius, banish his monster, right? And then attack for 24, plus get the burn damage, and then put them really low, and then we have Cyber Dragon plus Herald of Orange to make Ancient Sacred Wyvern, which is insane. Obviously, after we dealt 3,400, it becomes a 5,500 monster. Alternatively, we could preserve the Witch plus Gallus for the Black Rose play. We could just normal summon the DD Warrior Lady and trade with his monster, if it's Raikou, whatever. Save our Cyber Dragon plus Herald. We could save a lot of our cards. I figured the best play is to go Cyber Dragon for Caius, just banish his monster, deny him potential Raikou activation, Raikou mills, etc. And then preserve the Witch plus Gallus. We have DD Warrior Lady for follow-up next turn, and then we have the Herald in case we draw a Fairy. I think this is the best play, but I'm not really sure. There's a billion ways you could have opened with this hand, and that's what I like about having... good card maxing, is that you have options out the ass. You can interact to a lot of different scenarios. You're not just playing the same exact card every single game. You can set up a bunch of different ways. Caius banished the set monster. They set Arcus. I think this is a misplay. I think people get too crazy, like thinking, oh, my Arcus isn't going to die. But honestly, what you should do is you should summon it and you should get your mills ASAP in Lightsworn, because the mills and getting the Arcus in the graveyard is actually higher value than like maybe stalling for a turn. We attack for 24. Opponent doesn't have Gores. They set a monster past the turn. This is also a great way to play into Gores, because we have Witch plus Gallus to sort of rebuild in case he has Gores to get over our Caius. He sets monster passes. We draw Avarice, which is just perfect with his hand. We can normal summon Herald. We can make Stardust to play around Raikou. We could do a bunch of different stuff, but I figured I just want to shove for damage. So I'm going to summon the DD Warrior Lady, and I do want to, keep the Herald in case we do draw a Fairy, because this card is basically our only point of interaction in this hand besides the comeback play. But we don't have any other hand traps. So because we're hand trap light, I want to hold on to this Herald. We attack into the set with Caius. He does pop the Caius, which makes me very happy, because that means we're getting in 1,500. And it's getting us even closer to that like burnout range where we go like Gallus, hit for a certain amount of damage, Avarice, maybe Gallus again, maybe Caius again, and then win the game. Mills 3 completely misses. Blind milling, SMH, this is just going to happen a large percentage of the time, especially in these pure Lightsworn decks that are playing heavier trap lineups. We saw the bottomless, etc. We attack for 15. What he should have done here was pop the DD Warrior Lady. He doesn't recognize that, but he definitely should have. I mean, he has Honest to get over the Caius. Honest isn't going to do you any fucking good versus DD Warrior Lady. So, yeah, he definitely should have popped the DD Warrior Lady there. He draws Card Trooper. He plays it. He mills 3. He does hit a Wolf. So had he popped the Warrior Lady, he would have been up 1,500 life points here. And then on top of that, his Honest would have allowed him to get over the Caius and put us in a terrible position, pretty much. He attacks into the DD Warrior Lady. We banish the Card Trooper. Very high value card in this matchup, DD Warrior Lady. It got in damage and it banished the Card Trooper. You can't really ask for much more. He's going to attack for 2,100, and then I believe he passes the turn. We draw Tragodia, and I'm like, okay, this is clean as fuck. I can just Gallus, or I can Witch first, obviously Witch first, because you have to summon this when you control no other cards to get the effect. Draw into DD Crow, which is a fantastic piece of interaction that'll help keep him off 4 names. It stops Monster Reincarnations. He's already out both Monster Reincarnations. That's another reason why Herald of Green is good in this matchup as well. And then, what else was I saying? Oh, yeah, it'll also help stop if he mills another Wolf or a Plague or something like that. Mills Necro Garnet, so we can help force through our last few points of damage. Trag is going to be our lethal threat here. And now we have 3 hand traps, which is really nice. We Gallus, activate, mill Caius, deal 1200, putting him down to 2900, which is perfect. And we're actually just going to Black Rose and blow up this Wolf because I want to play around Honest. I don't want to play into Honest here. I just want to clear the threat, make sure it's gone, make sure I'm not getting Celestia next turn. I just want to blow up the field, and then I want to Avarice back my cards. So I go for Avarice here and put us up to 5 cards, and this deck just feels really good to play. Like, literally every single card in the deck is live, every single card in the deck is amazing. We draw Cyber Dragon Thunder King for, like, crazy stuff we can do next turn. We could even go Cyber Dragon Herald into Black Rose. We could go Cyber Dragon Herald into Ancient Sacred Wyvern, like we were talking about earlier. We could just summon the Thunder King. We could do all sorts of crazy shit. There's a million ways we could play this hand out, but I think it's just looking pretty good. He summons Gareth, he attacks, we're able to drop Trag, and it's perfect because we have a level 4, we can steal its Gareth. He didn't shuffle his hand, so I knew he drew Gareth for turn, which means I know his last 2 back rows are bluffs. I'm just going to pitch a monster, steal his Gareth, and then attack with both for game. This matchup, like I said, it's pretty good because we have these hand traps, and the hand traps make it very difficult for him to ever really push through things. But I think the opponent was not really understanding how aggressive our deck can be and how quickly this deck can force through damage. That's something that I think is the strength of this particular list and the strength of this this particular archetype, because you have Gallus, you have Honest, you have, a lot of ways to force damage, Caius. So it's like, it's just a really aggressive deck, and it should be played that way. It should be played like, I want to extend, I want to summon more. I want to summon Dimensional Alchemist. I want to summon Jinzo. These are great extenders. I want to be able to Herald of Purple Light and Icarus attack. I want to Snipe Hunter, pitch cards, and blow stuff up. Like, I want to extend more. Christie is another great extender. So I think this deck should definitely play more of an aggressive route and less of the, like, I'm going to mill a million cards. Because in reality, like, that just doesn't happen in a lot of games. Relying on Magical Merchant mills, it's just not a good strategy. Yes, you still want to play that for the synergy, obviously, for hitting the Avarice and just having those nut draws. But at the same time, you don't want to rely on it, and you don't want to have too many bricks in your deck. I think these changes definitely make Monster Mash a better deck. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below if you want to see me play this in a tournament. And then one last thing, if you guys want to sign up for Moreno Valley, signups are getting filled up, so definitely don't miss out on this. RBET Moreno Valley, RBET Orlando, once-in-a-lifetime events. Sign up for these events. I just got word that Fraser Smith and A True Hero are also coming to Moreno Valley. So if you guys want to, meet up with them or get a chance to play against some of the best players in the format, definitely come do that. And then on top of that, I also got word that the #1 ranked player in SoCal right now is going to RBET Moreno Valley as well. So a lot of really strong players come into this event. It's gonna be really stacked. It's gonna be really powerful. I think so far it's almost half full. So definitely get your signups in now. There's only one more month on that. So see you guys in the next one. Peace.